Hey guys, this is a quick video about how an Insinkerator InstaHot actually works, and also how to diagnose a dripping faucet. As you can see, mine's got a good drip going here. If you're subscribed to my channel, nothing on my channel is really consistent. I have videos on all kinds of random stuff, from cars to cooking and to gardening even, I think. But the reason I'm making this video is because it took me actually quite a bit of time to actually find out how this works. The owner's manual doesn't actually tell you very much, it just tells you how to put it together. And the closest I could find was a really generic minute-and-a-half long video that just described the basic concept. So I'm making this in a little bit more detail in hopes that at least there will be one video out there now that captures a lot of these details and what the different parts actually do. So I have I think they call it the hot-cold model. So I've got obviously like a hot and a cold spigot, or lever here. So it does have two sides to it. So this will also apply if you just have the hot only. You'll just have to kind of keep it in mind that these parts about the cold water coming out are not going to apply to you. So let's start here. Sorry, obviously there's not great lighting under most countertops. Mine's no exception. So, and you're gonna have to bear with me as I try and get around all these hoses here. Got hoses and different area codes. So right at this shutoff valve, if you look closely behind it, there's this blue line. So that is actually where everything starts from. So there's actually not a hot and a cold hookup for this like there is on your main sink. It actually all starts off as cold. So this goes into my filter assembly here. You can see it goes in. I've got these three-stage filtering things set up. And then it comes out, if you look closely, there's an orange line right there. So that orange line then comes around here. This is the output from my filter. It goes into a splitter, and there's two copper tubes that go up. And all of this goes up, and my phone can probably get back there some, but not all the way. Basically, all of these go up to one spot, which is, of course, the top side faucet. So anyway, this is basically just two paths of cold water coming in. So, up top, here's what happens next. They actually each go to one of these two valves. So, and they work fine, like so. Here's my cold. And then for the hot, you might think like, okay, well, obviously it doesn't just take that cold water and put it out through here. When you turn this lever, what it actually does is, instead of putting it into here to come out and commingle with this side of the faucet, it actually goes down through, I think, what they're calling the inlet tube, which is this blue one here, and this goes up to the faucet. So as soon as you open the hot, water actually goes from one of these two copper lines through the faucet, the valve opens, and it comes back down through here. Now, after that happens, so this is obviously the main unit where all the heating happens. It goes to the bottom of the tank, and that water pressure pushes up hot water through the system, and it comes out of this middle tube, which I think they're calling the outlet tube in the owner's manual and other documentation that I could find. Now, obviously, that's what comes out of your faucet here. This last tube on the very end is kind of hard to see. It's called the vent tube. And this one, I'm still not 100% sure. I know that it's to do, there's an expansion tank, and as things heat up to near boiling, they're going to expand and they need a place to go, so you're not creating a weak form of a bomb, I guess, inside your sealed pressure tank here. So it allows an avenue for, I guess, expansion, be that water or air to come out. And also, as you use it, I'm sure there's some air drawn in to replace there's going to be a vacuum created as this thing runs. So this also goes up. I'm not sure exactly where in the faucet it hooks up to, but I pulled it off and I was able to blow through it. So it's got some sort of access to the atmosphere, which makes sense because they call it a vent tube. But we're going to mostly be focusing on the lines that pertain to a dripping faucet, because that's what we're going to troubleshoot today. So let's think about it. So if this is dripping, that means that it's either coming from the hot side or the cold side. So if it's coming from the cold side, it could be a simple matter of, remember how there are those two copper lines, and one of them is going to go right to here. It just comes right from the filters. It doesn't go through. It doesn't even touch any of this, filter business or heater stuff down below the counter. So if it's the cold side leaking, it's probably a gasket somewhere over here, or an O-ring, or a cartridge is leaking. If it's the hot side, it could be a little bit more in depth, and that could be due to the vent tube might be blocked, and so it's kind of forcing, if there's a pressure buildup, it's forcing it through, and it's able to weep past the O-ring. That's just a guess. It could also just be a simple matter of maybe it's the same thing on this side, where maybe there's an O-ring that's damaged or a gasket that's damaged, and there's maybe some pressure buildup, and it's just weeping out there. Remember that this is actually always under pressure from so the cold one is under pressure. The hot one would only be under pressure if the hot one is open, the hot lever is opening, and then at that point there's no valves between here and here. It's going to basically a big loop. So once water comes in here, it's going to come right out here. So if this is leaking, it could be because maybe this is getting a little bit of pressure behind it, and we can check that. So that'll be our first step. We're going to go ahead and take off that inlet tube, the blue one, and see if it's dripping out of there. Then it makes sense that it would drip out of the hot side. If it's not leaking, we'll turn our attention to the cold side. So I'm just gonna, maybe I should have chosen a smaller bucket. So this one is really easy. Oops, let's stop knocking stuff over. What I'm gonna do is, it's kind of hard to see from this angle, but you press this in, and you can kind of see on this end it comes out. So you just depress this, and then you should just be able to take it off. So now we're going to see if it drips. Just put that in there. Keep an eye on it for a little bit. So if this guy, so there's going to be some drippage. Just shake it off. So if this continues to drip, then that's going to tell us that it's probably a leak at the faucet on the hot side. Another thing we're going to want to look at is what's happening on the top. So if that was the problem, I would expect this to stop dripping, because now it's not being pressurized anymore to return water out of the hot outlet tube. But actually what we're seeing is it's still dripping. And it's not really showing any signs of slowing down. This one's dripping a little bit too. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video here. I want to just let it sit for around 15 minutes. I want to give it a chance. If this is just residual water on the inlet tube, I want to give it the chance to work its way out. Another thing we can do is purge it. So if I turn on the hot side, there's going to be water that shoots out of here. So let me turn that on real quick. So as you can see, whenever you press the hot lever up here, it basically just connects one of these copper wires or copper tubes, and it comes right out here. So we saw that working. So yeah, let's come back in around 15 minutes and see if it's still dripping. Alright, I've let a little bit of time go by. Our status is that we still have a drip here, but I feel like it's not as fast as it was at the beginning of the video when I was first showing it. You might want to rewind and go back to the first minute or so and see if I'm actually right about that. I actually haven't compared it yet. Below, there is a little bit of a drip still coming out of this inlet line here. It's not very frequent. So let's think about this. So if this is still leaking, there's no way it could be coming from the hot circuit, because this is disconnected right now, and the only way that water is going to come out of the hot circuit is through this tube here. For that to happen, there needs to be pressure, obviously, from the cold side here into the bottom of the tank to return it out the top. So the fact that this is still leaking means it really can only be from the cold side. I mean, there's no other explanation for that. So the other way, like let's pretend that it stopped dripping. If it stopped dripping and this was dripping, then that would tell you that no ring or gasket on this side is bad because you have constant water pressure coming to the valve, but then the water pressure only goes back down through the blue tube if that's open. So if this stopped leaking and this was dripping at the same rate that that would tell you that there's not a problem with the cold side. In fact, actually one of your O-rings or something is damaged on this side, and that basically it's dripping almost like through the whole thing, and a little drip 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 here is a little drip 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 out there, and then voila. Now in my case, it actually looks like a combination of the both. Remember how I said I feel like the rate is slower now, maybe half, because it was 2 or 3 drips a second before, and now it's slower. It's closer to maybe 1 a second. So I'm actually thinking that I have a combination. I think I have failed O-rings on both sides, and this is because recently here in Texas we had a huge range of water pressures where we lost water pressure almost entirely in a winter storm in February, and then we got it back, and there was a lot of crud that came through the lines as the city started to resupply water pressure. And I'm betting that some of this crud, as I continued to use this, I replaced the filters, and I thought I was well on my way to, having my system working again. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if some of that crud is just built up in these 2 cartridges. So, with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the water off and put everything back together, and we'll look at how hard it is to replace the O-rings. Okay, so I've turned off the water supply down there, and that did stop the leak, but unfortunately that, doesn't leave you with cold water. So what I'm going to try next is, if you look closely here at the top, these actually have flats on them, these 2 little retainers for each of these 2 valves. So I'm going to see if, I'll start on the cold side, what lies below. So let's go ahead and I'm just using an adjustable wrench, as you can see. Yeah, comes right off. A little bit. Oops. I'm hoping there's not some kind of orientation that this needs to be in, but you can kind of see that this is already loose. Let's go ahead and unscrew this. So, see what we have so far. Oops. So there's 3 pieces in my hand. This threaded collar here. There's a really thin washer, and then this main part, which is just this like same piece as the handle. It's kind of integrated to the handle. It has 2 little pegs on the side. So if we look at what that slots into, so the good news is it's kind of hard to have this back on like crooked, because it looks like those 2 pegs clearly go into these 2 slots here, these 2 cradles. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this down before I drop it down the drain, and then we'll see if this comes out. This feels a little bit loose. I might need to go and get some pliers to see if this comes out. Stand by. Okay. Got some pliers. Let's see about this little this next piece that's in the... Oh, that wasn't too hard at all, actually. Let's have a look. On the inside, it looks like there's some kind of teeth, or splines almost. I'm not sure if that's relevant. Just put it here. Let's look at what's inside. This is looking, I see an O-ring, I think. So it looks like, this should be the cartridge. And it looks like it can be pushed down, which is good, so it's probably just like a slider type. Let's look at how this might work. I'm just gonna take these off the end. If this was sitting in here like, looks like this actually is, this can slide. So if this was in here like this, and you were to, sorry if I can get a better angle, turn the faucet what would happen is, because it looks like this part of it would actually bear down and actually depress this cartridge here. So I'm guessing that it's just going to be maybe like an O-ring on the top and the bottom, and when you slide it, it allows water to flow through. So we'll try and take this cartridge out and see what's underneath it and what's inside of it. See if I can do this without destroying the stupid thing. I know these faucets are not cheap if you need to buy a new one, and I might need to rethink my choice of tool here. Ow! Jeez. That's not really wanting to come out. Well, I'm going to try a couple things to get it out, and I'll come back to you when I get it. Okay, so actually I was having a better look, and see if we can actually see it here. But if you look in, there's actually a hex, meaning socket. I'm not sure, I don't know what size it is yet, and I'm not really confident that even if I had that size socket, that I'd be able to actually fit it in here. I think the socket outer diameter would be too large for it to actually get down actually into that part of the faucet. So I'm going to need to think of some alternative ways, and I'm going to have to end the video there and call this part 1, and maybe part 2 will be the eventual solution, which if it ends up being you know, something crazy, the solution could be just replacing the faucet, because it sounds like from what we've found so far it's a leak at the 2 cartridges up here. Alright.